So in the past year or so, there's been a significant drop in millennials and Gen Z using dating apps. While these platforms once revolutionized the way we meet people, recent events have shown a massive shift in how younger generations approach dating. From legal battles involving Hinge and Tinder to Bumble recently coming under fire, it's clear something major is happening in the world of online dating. Hinge and Tinder went under fire on Valentine's Day recently as they were sued by 6 plaintiffs in New York, California, and Florida. The parent company Match Group were accused of gamifying their services and transforming users into gamblers locked in a search for psychological rewards that Match makes elusive on purpose. There's a whole lot more to discuss with all of these apps such as Hinge, Tinder, and Bumble, and I'm gonna get into it in today's video. So hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Julia, and in today's video, we are gonna be discussing the fall of dating apps. And this is something I've been wanting to discuss for so long. And I know that I was gonna talk about celebrity worship and, like the Kendrick and Drake beef and all these other things, and I will be discussing that, but the dating apps really just hit my brain. I'm just like, I gotta talk about this. There's been so much controversy and I've been wanting to talk about it since Valentine's Day, but I decided to wait. So now we're gonna get into it. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. So dating apps like Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble really took the world by storm in the early 2010s. They really promised convenience and just efficiency with dating. With just one swipe, you're able to match with anyone in your vicinity. You're able to see similar interests as another person, and you basically get unlocked to a world of people you never knew existed, and they're only within maybe 10 to 30, 40, 50 miles from you. And this really just transformed casual dating and long-term relationship dynamics. However, the concept of dating with technology is not new, and it actually dates back not to the 1990s, not to the 1980s, but 1965, okay? 1965, we had the first online dating service, and it was created by a group of Harvard students. So users filled out a questionnaire, and then their answers were fed into an IBM 1401, which was one of the first mass-produced computers. These computers obviously now are dinosaurs, but they could do a lot of really fast stuff at the time. I think they could compute like over 190,000 calculations in a couple seconds, and that was really big back then. So that's kind of how online dating sort of began. We then fast forward to the 1990s and we're met with Match.com, which was kind of like the pioneer for modern dating apps that we see today. So Match.com was huge in starting online dating, and that's when I think you started to see it being like talked about in media more. Like I remember watching like shows from the 90s of them talking about like the very early online dating things. So that was really interesting. So we have like Match.com, and then we had eHarmony in the 2000s. And pretty much from there, we just had a whole bunch more dating apps and services. We then had platforms like OkCupid, which really allowed people to actually answer questions and offered more flexibility. And, so as these services kept surfacing through the years, it kept kind of stretching the envelope on what you could do and how you could use them and how you can make them more tailored to yourself. Then we fast forward to 2012 with Tinder, and Tinder basically just changed everything. Tinder changed the game. We all know how Tinder changed everything. Tinder really made dating more of like what we know today, and back then Tinder was very successful. You hear different stories from people who used Tinder back in the day and how they would get tons of matches, and there was a lot of, just success. And so Tinder just became bigger and bigger and bigger and kind of spawned all these apps we have now, like Hinge and Bumble and Plenty of Fish and stuff like that. But the parent company Match Group has monopolized these apps, so it ain't all that great. Like, it's a monopoly now, but it started it all. So like I mentioned before, Tinder really started the big boom of like modern dating apps on phones. And we have Hinge, which kind of called itself the anti-Tinder, and it's an app that's designed to be deleted. And so they kind of call themselves the anti-Tinder. We're not here for hookups. We want you to have like real long lasting relationships, marriages. We want you to really find your person, and you delete the app. Then we also have Bumble, which came out in 2014, which actually came from a former Tinder executive, and this is a woman, and this woman, can't remember her name right now, but I'll know later. This woman, she decided to make an app that was for women, an app that would make women feel safe, that would help women have kind of the first say. So with Bumble, you have women initiating conversations. Apparently that's not a thing anymore, but we're gonna get more into that. So now we get into the current state of dating apps. So according to a 2023 Statista survey, daters in the US between the ages of 30 and 49, who are mostly millennial, make up 61% of dating app users, whereas Gen Z comes in at only 26%. Hinge's 2024 DATE, which is Data, Advice, Trends, and Expertise report, Many Gen Zers daters cited fear of rejection and being cringe among their top concerns with dating apps. So that was in Hinge's report. And then a survey by Pew Research found that 45% of people aged 18 to 29 have used a dating app, but many report growing dissatisfaction with the experience. Then we get into the most common complaints. So some of the reasons for dating apps losing their appeal is people are tired of ghosting, people are tired of getting ghosted, people are tired of the superficiality of dating apps, people are tired of putting in effort and not getting it received, like they're not seeing reciprocal effort. And I used dating apps in the past. So this is back when I was in college. I was on an app for like a year and a half. And then I tried using an app one more time last year and I swore off of it after last year. So basically with these dating apps, you're kind of just swiping into the abyss, right? You're just swiping, trying to see who you can find, who you're attracted to, whose profile looks, actually viable, right? And so it kind of just feels like you're just swiping. And I think a lot of people have mentioned the feeling that it's inorganic. And as I stated with the lawsuit earlier, like this is by design, right? This is designed to keep you on the app. So with dating apps, like you're just swiping because you want to just find that perfect match. And it's designed to just keep you on there, and it just feels very superficial. I think another part of this is that you have access to pretty much everyone in the world. Like you have access to everyone in your city, your town, and if you want to go further out, you can. And so I think it's just the fact that you have access to so many different people is where it feels like you have to sift through the garbage. You know what I mean? So, because I feel like a lot of people are like, man, like there's no one on dating apps. All these people are trash, clowns, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's just because you have access to so many people, so you're sifting through so much more garbage. You know what I mean? Like you're sifting through so much more. And then we also have the issue of ghosting. So you meet a really cool person and then all of a sudden they just ghost you. They stop talking to you. Like you're making a connection, you're getting to know someone, everything seems fine. And then they just randomly ghost you. And that happens so often on apps. And I've always like hated ghosting. Like I remember back when I was younger in college, I used to get ghosted every here and there. And that used to make me so mad. And I was like, it's so cowardly. It's so petty. Because at least for me, like I would tell you like, hey, this is not going to work out and this is why. And I just like, I'm just straight up like that. So I'm like, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but I also don't want to lead them on. And so I used to get so annoyed because I was so transparent and upfront and I didn't get that same treatment. And so I think that's another thing that a lot of people suffer with dating apps is getting ghosted, and that can really take a hit on your self-esteem, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. I also wanted to mention that this is really just a problem regardless of race. Everyone in like basically everybody, no matter what age you are, everyone's struggling with dating apps. It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Asian, purple, green, like it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone seems to have a problem with dating apps. But however, I did find a study from 2014, so it is kind of old, but I did find a study and it was by OkCupid, and they mentioned that Black women and Asian men were rated as less attractive than their counterparts, which I found very interesting, but also I'm not surprised. Like that didn't surprise me at all, but I would love to see an updated study to see what it looks like today. But at the end of the day, I'm not surprised. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the most helpful features on these apps are behind a paywall. You have to pay for some of the best features. You have to pay for better users. Like this is what was stated in the lawsuit. And, I think for people who've used dating apps, you can attest to this. I think I can attest to it too. Back when I used to use dating apps, I felt like some of the most basic things that I feel like you should be allowed to know about a person, you have to pay to figure out. And if you want to get a certain match, you have to pay all this money. It's like, you're just trying to make me broke. You don't want to see me happy, and in a relationship, you just want me to be broke. So then I want to get into the mental health impact of dating apps. And so for me, basically my consensus on dating apps is that no one should use them. We should all get off them and boycott them. That's my opinion. And I know that there's going to be people out there who are going to be like, oh, well, I met my husband on a dating app. I met my wife and it was successful. Yes, a lot of people have been successful on dating apps. No one's denying that. But I think, especially now, it is so much harder. You have to have a lot more patience. And again, they've made it harder by making it more of a business, really commodifying it more. So it's harder. It's not as easy as it was 5 or so years ago even. So I feel like some people are going to find my opinion really extreme. But personally, I just feel like once these apps decide to stop paywalling everything and making it really hard to connect with people, like that was the intention for these apps in the beginning, then I can understand like getting on dating apps. But I personally feel like if people just boycotted, then they'd have no choice but to change their tactics and their business model. But then again, this is the real world, and unfortunately it's not sunshine and rainbows, so that probably won't happen. But like I said, I feel like if people did band together, maybe something could change. But hey, that's just idealistic thinking. Alyssa Foreman, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the executive clinical director of Optimum Performance Institute in Woodland Hills, California, spoke to the positives and negatives of dating apps. And on this article that I found, she literally only spoke to 2 positives and she had 7 negatives. So the positives are that, you can ease social anxiety. For example, if you're not as good at talking, you're not as good at, just trying to strike up conversation with the opposite sex, doing things such as a dating app is really beneficial, It really takes the pressure off of you and you're just able to focus on your similar interests and kind of what's on the profile. But the negatives include depression, anxiety, dating app addiction, becoming more impatient, difficulties forming in-person relationships. So she went into detail with all these different, caveats and bad sides of dating apps. So I think one of the biggest things that I noticed that I really, recognize with dating apps and people that are on apps is that when you're getting constantly ghosted, that's like rejection. Or when you're always being rejected, you're constantly susceptible to somebody saying, no, I'm not interested in you. And this is a person you probably have never met or a person you maybe only knew for a little while, but their rejection hits so much harder for you. And I think that's so unhealthy. And then also like the dating app addiction. So like I said before, you're so hooked on trying to find that person. You have all these people at your disposal. So you're just swiping into the abyss. Like that's not healthy for anybody. So I want to get a little bit more into the Tinder and Hinge lawsuits. So basically 6 people have decided to sue Tinder and Hinge, and they really talked about how they gamify their services and they turn people into mindless swiping warriors. So here's the quote. So Tinder's co-founder Jonathan Badeen told Joe Sales, who's a reporter, that the dating app's swiping feature was partially inspired by a famous experiment by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner. In it, Skinner turned pigeons into gamblers by giving them food delivered at random intervals. But the pigeons believed their pecking prompted the food to appear, causing the birds to carelessly hammer away at their trays. Just as pigeons can be conditioned to peck at determinable intervals, so can users be conditioned to endlessly swipe, according to the lawsuit. And so my opinion on the whole Tinder Hinge lawsuit thing, I think it just kind of is part of that whole just debate on social media in general, that social media is keeping people mindless. It's keeping people on these apps. It's contributing to the young mental health crisis. But I guess in my opinion, I was kind of like, okay, why not just delete the app? But I also feel like it'll be so interesting to see what comes from this lawsuit, to see like the proof that yes, this is literally just to keep people on apps. This is to keep people, basically just endlessly trying to find something they probably will never find, or something that they'll find, but it might take forever, or it's just not as likely as it used to. And, I think, I feel like Tinder and Hinge and Bumble, they kind of hinge upon their success stories of people who found love on these apps. But I've noticed that a lot of people who find love on dating apps, this was several years ago. I feel like I don't know anyone recently that's been successful with apps. I feel like everyone's kind of just like struggled with them. And I just think that's really crazy. I just think the whole thing is just crazy. But when I really recognize that, hey, like these apps are designed to keep you on, there's no point in being on them, in my opinion. Bumble has also come under fire recently, and Bumble has come under fire for multiple reasons. So one of them was because of their billboard about celibacy. Basically, like a vow of celibacy is not the answer. And I thought this was just so disgusting and tasteless. I thought this was just horrible. And I'm going to give my perspective as a Christian. I want to give my worldview perspective in that regard. And so for me, I think as a Christian, I don't think any Christian should be on dating apps. So I wanted to say this right now because I know that some people are going to be like, hey, I'm a Christian and I found my husband or wife on a dating app. And I know that there's still some stigma in the church over dating apps. But personally, the reason why I think it's just dangerous, and I did say this in the video, but I think I could say it better right now. I just feel like you have to use so much discernment, and I feel like there's a lot of temptation with apps. I think you have to be very fortified in knowing your purpose for being on the app and understanding like, okay, I'm going to find who God wants me with. Like, I'm not on here because of vanity. I'm not on here because to like fill my flesh and fill my desires. I'm on here for a God-given purpose, And so I just think in general, dating apps are very, very, very rife with temptation. And that's why I feel like a Christian should stay away from it. However, at the end of the day, if you feel like you are strong enough in your faith that you can handle it, then by all means, go for it. No one's stopping you, but you just have to be very aware of the risks and making sure you don't compromise your faith. So Yeah, that's my opinion. And I feel like Christians are gonna come for me and be like, what are you talking about? I found blah, 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 blah on the app, blah, 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 blah. And I was also on dating apps in my past, so I can't sit here and act like I've never used the apps. But I personally think that, especially with the way the apps have gone in the past couple of years, I feel like these apps are really, really, really hinging on, just your emotional faculties. You know what I mean? I feel like these apps are really preying on that. And I feel like, especially like if you're a Christian, I think with these apps, I think a lot of times, like what I spoke about before with superficiality, you're looking at how these people look and like how these people, present themselves, and you're kind of falling into vanity. I feel like it's really easy to become or to fall into vanity on dating apps, even if you're trying to check yourself. I feel like you have to have very strong, just like, you have to be very fortified in your faith to not fall to that. And then there's also just the fact that you're putting expectations on people. You're expecting certain things of them. And I feel like that can, again, be really dangerous because you're putting all your expectations in man and not God. So personally for me, I think it's just a really dangerous game to play. You have to be very, very strong in your faith. But I think even just in general, no matter who you are, I just think that, with the way that these apps are structured nowadays, it's just going to try to keep you in a constant loop of trying to seek connection, and then you get complacent. I feel like complacency starts because you're like, oh, well, if this doesn't work out, I have this person next. I have that person I can go to. I can contact anyone on these apps. And I think it kind of you become complacent when maybe, keep trying to go out to that certain event, or maybe if you keep trying to go to that same place, or maybe even switch it up when you go outside, maybe you might meet somebody out in the real world. You never know, and so that's kind of my thing with how I view it. I literally tried going on the app once last year. I was like, hey, if this doesn't work, I'm done. And it didn't work and I'm done. So I just kind of feel like for myself, I was on it so much in college for that year and a half that I've been on it enough to like suffice for like the rest of my life, But again, going back to this billboard, it really frustrates me because I just feel like sex is not something that should be played with. And I hate that they're kind of making, they're going against people who are abstinent, going against people who just are taking a vow towards celibacy. It's very, I think, disrespectful. And like I said, it's not something to be played with. I feel like when you're getting intimate with someone, that is a very, 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 very strong bonding activity that you're doing. I mean, when you have intercourse, you're releasing oxytocin, just like when you're hugging someone or whatever, like you're releasing oxytocin at such a, strong rate, and that really bonds you to a person. And I just feel like you have to be so careful with who you lay down with. You can't just be laying down with anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't just be laying down with anybody. You hear that phrase of a girl being, excuse my language, digmatized. Like you hear about someone being digmatized, and it's literally because they're so enamored with the that they can't actually see the red flags for what they are and leave regardless. That's scary. And that's the kind of power that intercourse has. And I kind of feel like society has watered it down so much. Like, I feel like we look at it so casually nowadays, and that's so sad. Like, it goes back to hookup culture. I can't stand hookup culture. Hookup culture has just nullified an act that's supposed to be so meaningful and so sacred into something that is just an everyday thing or just a quick thing and you move on. I just think it's going to leave you empty. If you're just messing with people that don't have any care for you, it's going to leave you empty, leave you confused, leave you emotionally deficit. And you're trying to pick up the pieces, but it feels like you've given yourself away so many times. You're trying to pick up the pieces, but you've done that bonding act so many times. You've really increased your attachment to several people. It's hard. And I'm not trying to shame anyone. If anyone tries to think of this as shaming. I'm just illustrating the power of intimacy. I want to say, but apparently I'll get flagged for saying so stupid. And so recently, the Bumble founder, Whitney Hurd, has been under fire for that billboard, as well as a comment she made about AI, which is insane. I don't know if y'all have heard about this, but basically she discussed that you can use AI if you're finding dating difficult. You can have an AI concierge where they basically know about all your interests, wants, who you are, and your AI concierge could go out and date for you with other AI dating concierges. And then you don't have to talk to 600 people in all of San Francisco, her words.
How can we actually teach you how to date? How can we help you show up in a better way?
So give me an example.
Okay, so for example, you could in the near future be talking to your AI dating concierge and you could share your insecurities. I just came out of a breakup. I have commitment issues. And it could help you train yourself into a better way of thinking about yourself. And then it could give you productive tips for communicating with other people. If you want to get really out there, there is a world where your dating concierge could go and date for you with other dating concierge. No, truly. And then you don't have to talk to 600 people. It will scan all of San Francisco for you and say, these are the 3 people you really ought to meet.
So I just think this is ridiculous because you're talking about AI concierges, or you're encouraging AI to go out and date, which is going to further push the loneliness crisis. We're having like a loneliness crisis right now, and you want AI to go out and date for you. You want AI to basically learn about you and basically do the dating for you. How does that make any sense? How? That is like, what in the Black Mirror? That is so dystopian. So now we're going to talk to the shift in dating culture. So again, people have really been struggling with dating, tired of getting ghosted, tired of this, tired of that on dating apps. And people are starting to go back into the real world to date. People are trying to start, hey, I want to meet a person at church. I want to meet a person at a group. I want to meet a person at doing sports or going to the gym and things like that. We're really trying to instill that in-person, dating thing again. I think COVID has a lot to do with it. I think COVID really threw a wrench in us so much because we were so isolated from people. And so it's like we're still, I think, recovering and relearning how to get out there in the real world and date. I also think social media has really helped bridge the gap as well. So some people could consider this online dating, but I don't see it that way. Like if you meet someone on Instagram or on a social platform and then you take the conversation from your social media to in person, like there's a lot of people I've like known from just like whether I met them at church or whatever, like, and this is just friends, like in general, like I'll meet people, they find my Instagram and then they're like, oh, like I met you here. And then we start a friendship. And so that's how, a lot of dating has happened. I have friends where it's happened like that for them. And so that's another way to kind of get people to date where it's sort of like a in-person, but also social media type of way, you know what I mean? And so I think that's what we're trying to do. And in general, I just think Gen Z, millennials, we just crave authenticity, which kind of leads me into the preferences for us. I think we're just craving authenticity. We're so sick and tired of superficiality and like, celeb culture, influencers, things like that. And I think we're just craving real connection and real authenticity again. And I honestly have to say that I'm really proud of like my generation and millennials for really introducing that again, because I think we've all just felt the real, I guess like the weight of loneliness and kind of how our world has changed. So I think this is something that we're really craving and really wanting. And then I think also, discussing, like I mentioned a little bit about race earlier, a lot of people tend to get harassed on dating apps, whether, you're overweight or you're, a minority woman. It's like you're constantly, dealing with harassment or just weird things on apps. So it's just better off to meet people in the real world, or at least try to. And, dating in the real world can be trash too. Like it sucks, right? It's hard, right? It's hard, but I feel like it's a better way of going about dating than on these apps that are just trying to gamify their services. So again, while I personally don't like dating apps, I really do think that if dating apps move to a system where it's not about gamifying their services, but genuinely trying to help you foster connection, not putting all the most essential features behind a paywall, I think we could have a much better, I think dating apps could be successful again. I think it could be like back when it was back in the day. I think people could find more success and there could just be more authenticity and just more genuine, organic connection that way. I really think that if dating apps make that shift, that would be a lot easier. I also think maybe something that dating apps could try to do is maybe profile verification. So enhanced profile verification, so that way I'm not trying to meet somebody that's just, just messing around, doesn't really care. Like, let's say if it's an app like Hinge that really wants you to meet your person, right? Let's actually vet people to make that happen, right? So that's kind of what I think could support in general. So I kind of want to ask you guys, what do y'all think about dating apps in terms of the future? Do you think that dating apps are going to be successful? Do you think they're going to stick around in the future? Or do you think they're going to fall off, or are they going to evolve? Quite honestly, I don't know the answer. I don't know what's going to happen to dating apps in the next several years, but I just think it's really interesting to discuss. And so I hope you guys like my breakdown of dating apps. I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about the whole where Gen Z and millennials stand with it. And I just hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your comments on dating apps, your experiences with them. Have you had success stories? Have you just failed a bunch of times on the apps? Let me know in the comments. I'd be super curious to hear from y'all. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye.